we thought where would be the best place to start from. And I thought, why not start from Swindon,
Okay.
where you were born?
People listening in the Arab region, what is Swindon?
Swindon is a city or a town or a village?
Town
in the UK.
Yeah.
But what we noticed is your dad is a first generation immigrant
Yes.
in the UK, and you grew up in the 80s.
Yep.
So how was it growing up? How did it affect you as a person, your personality?
It's a good question. I think it defined who I was from a very early age. My sister and I have one sister, we grew up in Swindon till the age of, I was there till the age of 5, so not very long. But I have early memories. I have memories of primary school, or what the US calls elementary school, where my sister and I were the only brown people in that school. I'm sure it's changed today. I haven't been back to Swindon for many years. But brown folks are everywhere now. But I'm sure at the time, we were the only non-white people. So from a very early age, that idea of being a minority was imprinted on me. My entire life has been defined by being a minority of some shape or form, whether it's religious, ethnic, national, whatever it is. That was defined from a very early age. And I remember one of my earliest memories actually is my mother said to me, make sure you don't eat ham when you go to school. Don't eat pork or ham. And I went to school, and it was Swindon. And the dinner lady said, do you want a hamburger or a hot dog? So I ate a hot dog, and I thought the hamburger would be... And my mom was mad at me. But those were the days. Yeah. Now, mashallah, a lot of Muslim kids in schools get halal options. We didn't have it in my day.
Yeah, I remember when I went to university as well, there was a Muslim union almost. Yeah. And
you were at UCL, right?
I was in UCL,
That's a Muslim central.
Yeah.
That's a great place to be for halal food and brown people.
Yeah.
It's a great
But yeah, even though at the time, I was there in 2016, even though at the time there wasn't a lot of halal food in the cafeteria, so all the Muslim folks got together and they wanted to bring more food, and they did that, which I thought was amazing. But going back to Swindon, and I read in your book and also in an interview that you did, or a debate that you were part of in BBC's Question, you said, my father came to this country in 1966. Yeah. He used to write lots of letters to newspapers with his views on the stories of the day. And he used to get dog litter through his letterbox in response. How did you feel about that?
Yeah, my dad told me that story. I was like, wow, he actually lived through, you talk about racism of the old school type in abstract. Yeah. But actually, some of us have parents who lived through that period. And my father moved from India to the UK, part of a big migration of Indians to the UK. But he's a very opinionated person. I get a lot of my political views and my love for debate from my dad. And back in the 60s and 70s, if you wrote to the Times newspaper, the Times of London, they would print your full address. Today they don't do that because of doxing or whatever it is. Yeah. But they would put, your full house number, street, etc. So it was very easy for racists to target you in response. So yeah, my dad told me that story about that used to happen to him. I mean, he moved to the UK at a time when, restaurants, hotels, motels, hostels used to have signs outside saying, no dogs, no blacks, no Irish, right? That was the UK in the 1960s and 70s. So it was a very different period. And UK obviously made a lot of progress. But unfortunately, if you're following UK politics now, as in other Western countries, a lot of that progress is being undone.
Undone?
Yeah, we're regressing. Multiculturalism is being disowned. Yes, diversity is seen as a bad word. When people in the US, where I am now, say MAGA, make America great again, the question some of us ask is, when do you think it was great? What year do you want to go back to? You want to go back to the 50s, pre-civil rights era? What year do you actually want to go back to? So there is a lot of regression going on in Western democracies right now when it comes to race, immigration, minorities.
But don't you think that's because the multicultural target was not reached, if I can say, but and people now are losing their cultural heritage as countries, and when you go to the UK now, you don't feel like it's Britain again. That's the general feeling, don't you think?
That's a propaganda lie.
Do you think so? Yeah,
I think so. I mean, depends what you define. If your definition is it doesn't feel like Britain because there's not enough white people, then sure, that's true. But if you're not defining it in an ethnic or racial way, then what is Britain? Britain has always been, I know we use the word melting pot for the US, but so is Britain. It was the home to an empire. I mean, there's the famous line from Indians, which is, we are here because you were there. Right? The Britain went around and conquered much of the world, And a lot of those countries still in the Commonwealth sent a lot of people back. And I think that is an important point. When people say multiculturalism has failed, and it's a line that's very popular now, even amongst some liberals, you look at the UK right now, last time I checked, the mayor of London, elected for a third time, is a British Muslim son of a Pakistani immigrant bus driver. I don't think multiculturalism has failed. I think people want it to fail, but that doesn't mean it has failed.
Okay. So back to your childhood, and I really want to get into your journalism now.
Yes.
And being from a Muslim family, first-generation immigrants, they usually pressure you into going into
Yes.
medicine,
Yes.
engineering to secure your future.
Yes.
But you went into journalism. Were you not pressured? How did you end up in journalism?
It's funny you should say medicine and engineering because my mother is a doctor and my father is an engineer. It's a cliched Asian Desi couple there. And yeah, all of their friends are in similar professions, and all of my friends who were, kids of immigrants also went down that route. A lot of doctors, a lot of pharmacists, a lot of dentists, a lot of engineers. My sister and I are both journalists, so we're both disappointments to our parents in many ways. Well, actually, more to my mother than my father. My father was actually always very supportive. He loves politics. He loves news and current affairs. So I think he lives vicariously through me. He loves. I think I do the stuff that he wishes he could have done in some ways, and he had the ability to do. My father's a very good public speaker, but he's a civil engineer by training, worked for the United Nations much of his life, traveled a lot, but very traditional. My mother, I think, still wishes I did something different. I feel like even now, if I told her tomorrow, Mum, I'm becoming an accountant, she'd be delighted, even though I'm 45 years old and I have a kid on the way to university. She's never been a fan of it, mainly because she's a classic Indian Muslim mother, protective, doesn't like the fact that I'm out there picking fights, getting threatened, getting into rows with powerful people. She's very protective, would rather, keep your head down. She said to me one time, she's like, you should just stop talking about Donald Trump. I said, I'm literally a journalist. He's president of the United States. I wish I could, I can't. So this is the world we live in where a lot of parents now are actually changing. I speak to a lot of Muslim American crowds, British Muslim crowds. A lot of them have kids who are doing different things. And I often joke with them and say, look, if you have 4 kids, maybe only 3 of them need to be doctors. Maybe 1 can do something different, a little outside the box. Yeah. We do need people from our backgrounds who look like us, believe what we believe, have had upbringings like we've had, to be in all those spaces, right? I've been an evangelist for Muslims in the West, getting into media and culture and arts and film and politics and public life, public service. We can't just be cocooned off in little bubbles cut away from everyone else, just being doctors.